Would you worship a god who wore the skin of the dead? This was a god who fed the whole of humanity by flaying himself alive. This was a god that turned war and sacrifice into the promise of renewal. This was Xipe Totec, the Aztecs' flayed lord. He was considered a deity of life, of death, and of renewal. In his stories, it said that he tore off his own skin so that the people could eat. And it's symbolic like the maize, like the corn. Like the maize seed sheds its husk right before it sprouts. That's how you can think of the flayed Lord Xipe Totec. You can also see him like a snake, like how the snake renews its skin, how it has to take off its skin in order to keep living. It's a renewal. That's the one that I like the best to describe Xipe Totec. Xipe Totec was honored by the farmers for their crops, but he was also a god of war. And one of his favorite things were sacrifices. Obviously, we all know this about the Aztecs. But who were these gods, really? So I want to give a trigger warning as I get into the part about the sacrifices that they offered to him, okay? They are gruesome. The rituals were shocking, but they carried a lot of meaning. The shedding of the skin represents transformation, as like when the snake sheds its skin, it transforms, leaving behind the old so that new life can emerge. Xipe Totec comes from a divine family lineage. His parents were Ometecutli and Ometesihuat, the dual creators of basically everything. And his siblings were some of the most powerful gods in the Aztec pantheon. Together with his siblings, they created the 4 Tezcatlipocas, the 4 directions. So each of those siblings represented a different direction. And this has been interpreted in various ways. All the different calendars, all the different ways consider different aspects. I personally consider Xipe Totec to be Lord of the West, as the West is like death and rebirth. So together with his siblings, Huitzilopochtli, Quetzalcoatl, and Tezcatlipoca, they not only ruled the 4 directions, they ruled the entirety of the cosmos right under their parents, the dual creators, which would make like Ometeo, the whole of creation. And basically, they also ruled over destiny and everything that has to do with anything, apparently. So every spring leading up to the spring equinox for 21 days, they would celebrate Xipe Totec as he was the god of renewal. During those 21 days, the Aztecs chose some captives, some special people that were going to be offered to Xipe Totec. So they would choose these captives months before, and these people were made to live in his living image. So for months ahead of time, they were actually dressed up as Xipe Totec. They were also purified. They were honored. On the 21st day, which would generally happen on the equinox of the spring, then their hearts were offered to the sun, which would be Huitzilopochtli, and the skin was carefully removed from their bodies. And for 21 days after that, the Xipe Totec priests would wear those skins. While they were wearing those skins, they would perform different types of ceremonies. They would walk down the streets, perform healings, visit families that had any sickly children, visit farmers that needed help with crops. The people believed that these skins had healing powers. And children, especially with rashes on the skin, any skin conditions or eye conditions, would be made to touch the skins. The farmers of the towns would offer corn and flowers to the priests so they can have a fruitful harvest. Xipe Totec was also the patron of goldsmiths, metal workers, craftsmen. Basically, they would pray to him for skills. They would generally offer something to him so he could give them the skills they needed. But if they broke their promise, they would be the ones sacrificed next year. Generally speaking, Xipe Totec is depicted as wearing red under the skins. His skin is all flayed and cut. His symbols were a pointed war cap and a rattle staff. The emperor would generally dress like him if he was ever in war. In 2019, archaeologists discovered the first known temple that was dedicated to Xipe Totec in Puebla, Mexico. The stone carvings of the flayed skins and altars across the temple proved that this temple was in honor of Xipe Totec. And Xipe Totec's story is not only gory, it's meant to remind people about the cycle of life, death, rebirth, shedding the skin to renew yourself, shedding the old, letting it go, enduring transformation no matter how uncomfortable it gets, and being reborn stronger than before. So what do you think? Would you fear the flayed Lord? Or would you honor him as the giver of a new life?